Very, very quick today. We'll just discuss over Chag. We transitioned from Mashiv Haruach to Morid Hatal, and as well from Barech Alenu to Barechenu. So let's discuss very briefly some of the halachot that pertain to both of these. So we officially entered, according to the Gemara and the Chachamim, we've entered the no longer the rainy season, the summer season. The summer season, for this reason, the halacha explains, reading in Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuf Yudaled, Im Amar Morid Hageshem, meaning what we say Mashiv Morid Hageshem, Beyamot Hachama, in the summer season, Machzirin Oto, Vechozel Rosh HaBeracha, Veim Siyam HaBeracha, Chozel Rosh HaTefilah. ואפילו במקום שצריכים גשם בימות הגחמה, אם יסיר גשם במקום טל, מחזירין אותו. So the halacha, the Shulchan Aruch explains very simply, very pretty straightforward, that someone who accidentally says Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem in lieu instead of Morid Hatal, which is we switch to Morid Hatal, needs to repeat his Amidah. And the halacha is pretty simple. Someone who's in the middle of his tefillah, and he says, and he said Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem accidentally, so long that he didn't yet say the beracha, he can go back to say Morid Hatal, and just say that and continue. Once the person says Baruch Atah Hashem Mechayeh HaMetim, at that point needs to go back to the beginning of the Amidah and start tefillah once again. Now the same applies with Barech Alenu, or similar applies to with Barechenu versus Barechenu. Halacha explains that Im Ta'av Amar Barech Alenu Bekayitz, if someone made a mistake and said Barech Alenu, meaning the wrong paragraph in the summer, we're really saying Barechenu. Im Niskar Kodem Shenechtam Chozel Shabaracha. So there's a few different checkpoints in this halacha. If you remember before saying Baruch Atah Hashem Mevarech Hashanim, you just go back to the beginning of the beracha. It's very simple. Barech Alenu, Barechenu, no problem. If someone remembers Veim Achar Hashem Baruch Atah Hashem, so over here, they're saying a third checkpoint, meaning an extra checkpoint. If you say Baruch Atah Hashem, you're in the middle of the beracha, and you realize, oh wait, I said I was in the middle of the wrong paragraph. There's a pasuk in Tehillim, Lamdeini Chukecha, that begins with Baruch Atah Hashem. When you do that, it's as if you're not saying a beracha levatala, and then you can go back to Barechenu. A little complicated, we can explain that a little more in depth later on. Then the next step would be, if after you make the bracha mevarech hashanim, all the way till the end of Shema Kolenu, any point of there, so how is this different? You go back to Barechenu, then continue in order. So the question is, why is Barechenu different than Morid Hatal? If you say the bracha, Mechayeh Metim, you have to go back to the beginning of the Amidah. Versus if you say, if you get up to the middle, Ala Tzadikim, you go back to Barechenu. What's the difference? So the answer is very simple. The brachot in the middle are all independent berachot, meaning we have 13 brachot in the middle of the Amidah. Each one is its own check mark. So you have to go back to correct yourself. You don't need to go back to the beginning, just go back to Barechenu. It's an independent marker. As opposed to the first three brachot, Magen Avraham, Mechayeh Metim, Hayla Kadosh, that's all one section. If there's a flaw in that section, you have to go back to the beginning. That's the nuance between the two. And the halacha just concludes, if you finish your tefillah, or about to do a Seh Shalom, and you realize, oh man, I said the wrong one, you go back to the beginning. Now what happens if you don't know? If I don't know what I did? So the halacha can gam כשמסופח תוך 30 יום מפסח אם אמר כהוגן או לא. So Halacha explains that if you don't know, it goes based on what are you accustomed to. How do you determine what you're accustomed to? What's your natural, what you're doing subconsciously? Even though you should really have kavanah, but we're all human, we just go into autopilot sometimes. 30 days. If you're within 30 days of Pesach, then if you have a doubt, you have to go back. If you're post 30 days, you can assume that at this point your auto drive does the right one and you don't have to go back. That's just the halacha with these two things. Shabbat shalom and have a wonderful day.